That's a negative topic, but it's not negative. It's been really exciting to go through and talk about. So today we're going to do another thing on that. But there's a couple things I want to say before then, just to express some things. Coming here to Space Coast Church, we want this to be a place where you can come and explore your faith. A place where you can come in safety, you can work things out. So we kind of have a saying here that, you come, you connect with us, and then you take some time to grow, and then you grow to a point where you begin to share with others. And that's kind of what we do here. So I wanted to say that, and also, I also want to say, I think you picked up on it, but we have amazing people here. I look at, Maureen and Jazzy getting up there and just speaking their hearts just to welcome people. And then, Curtis, Courteous for short, comes along and he uncorks this communion, that's just such a heartfelt communion that's so good. It just makes us all search our souls. And I think, I'm sitting there thinking, man, we really have great people here in a great church. And I just thank all of you that there are members here. You just give your hearts every day. You give your heart to God. You lay something on the altar for God every single day that you wake up. And I appreciate that about you. God sees it. You walk with God all the time. Whether you are thinking about it or not, we're actually going to talk about that a little bit today. So, but anyway, just a great place. If you are visiting today, and I know a lot of people are, that, please stay and get to know us. Come back, because we are a family, and that's just who we are. So today we're going to look at our, like I said, the third of our 4-part series on fearing God. Week number 1, just to kind of go back a little bit and do a quick review, week number 1 was we defined what does it mean to fear God, because it actually can be something that we think is different than what it is. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Week number 2 was, how should I think about fearing God? And when we got into it in week number 1, we kind of went deeper into the scriptures and looked at the words behind it, the Greek and the Hebrew behind fearing God. And it actually has to do with respect and reverence and awe. It's not the kind of fear like you would have fear of somebody that was abusive to you in your life. It's a fear out of respect and reverence. And you see that time and time again. As we took a tour through the Bible, we saw that as we looked at the different verses. And we saw how different men of the Bible reacted to God and drew close to God, but yet were in holy fear of God. And it's this kind of fear. And then we looked at basically how big God was. And we started looking at the expanse of the universe, and particularly looked at what the Milky Way galaxy would look like if you were somehow outside of the Milky Way galaxy, which is what we're in, planet Earth, inside, the sun, inside the Milky Way galaxy, over 100 billion, some say 200 billion stars. Think about that. Let that sink in. 200 billion stars with planetary systems inside one galaxy. And the number of galaxies in the universe not really known. It's too big to get our minds around how big this thing is that our God created. So certainly He is worthy of our fear, a fear that's out of awe and respect for God. Wouldn't you agree? And in fact, when you look at some of the verses, you look in Genesis chapter 1, verse 16, it talks about how God made 2 great lights. We talked about this last week. The greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. Of course, the sun and the moon. But it says there's an also clause on there. He also made the stars. That's just an amazing thing. It's not really an afterthought, but it's almost like, the writer, it was an afterthought to put it in here. God, oh, by the way, He made the stars. That's just an amazing thing to think of. And it kind of, I started thinking about this morning again, how God has this blank canvas at some point in eternity. He had a blank canvas, and He began speaking the words. And He began, saying, the stars, create the stars, and they appeared. That's just mind-boggling when you think about it. It says in Romans chapter 4, verse 15, one thing, a trait that God has that we don't have. We are a very creative people. All people like to create stuff. I would say everybody in this room loves to sit around and think up things to create, right? We build things out of something. But God has a unique quality in that He can create out of nothing at all. He can speak it into existence, and it actually happens. That is a being worthy of awe and respect. In the presence of the God in whom he believed, who gives life to the dead, first of all, and calls into existence the things that do not even exist. God calls those things into existence. What an amazing God. Proverbs chapter 9 verse 10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight." We can have all kinds of knowledge that we've amassed throughout our life, but if we don't have the fear of the Lord, we are at ground zero. We are just starting. It doesn't matter what else we've accomplished. That is the 0 point. That's the baseline. That's the beginning of wisdom. We can think what we want about wisdom, but if we don't have the fear of the Lord, we have nothing that's wisdom of any kind, which is amazing to think about, right? So today, we're going to look at what is stirred in me when I think about fearing God. And I think I reminded you about this last week, but today's a little bit different. Instead of me standing up here and doing the talking, I want to hear from you guys because you've had a couple of weeks to process this. What does this all mean for me? And so I do want to have a little bit of interaction here in just a few minutes about what do I think, what's stirred in me when I think about fearing God. And you guys are always good about, throwing out your what's on your mind. And so we're going to do that in a little bit here in a few minutes. So just an overview. This is week number 3. Next week will be the wrap-up of the series, What Actions and Transformations Should I Make as a Result of Fearing God? So that will be our wrap-up. You don't want to miss that. Come on out for it. We do put these things online. We've got, if you go to our website, you can click a link that goes to the Space Coast Church YouTube channel. We do have that. And it has all of these panels are out there with my voice in it, so you can listen to the sermon. So if you've got other people you think you want to have them listen to it, or whatever, they can follow that link and go out there and very easily do that and kind of recreate it. I was thinking about you remember, the Survivor. I was looking online at these reality shows, and there's been like 40 reality shows. And I don't know about you, but I can get pretty tired of reality shows. Actually, the truth be known, I've never actually really watched a reality show. I just can't do it. It's too much for me. That is the reality of it. But it does beg the question, what is reality? I start thinking about that. What is real reality? Like if we stop for a minute in our busy lives and we think about what is reality for me, what is that really? In fact, is God real? Is another question that's kind of related to that. Is God real? Do you really believe as you live your daily lives and all the hustle and bustle in our daily lives, and wouldn't you agree that right now our lives are more busy than they've ever been at any other time, any other generation? I think we have, as a people of the earth, we have basically found ways to fill every second of our lives up with something. Social media, whatever it is, we're totally wired, we're connected, all of these things 24/7 it seems like. But do we have time to think about, is God real? And as we stop maybe and slow down for a few minutes and think about our existence and the things that we do from day to day, is there a sense that you are in His presence as you walk around? You're in His presence as you walk, and that He is with you all the time. Do you ever stop and just think about that? God is with you all the time. It's like the guy that got in Jonah. Jonah tried to get away from God. What a, kind of a dumb thought. He actually tried to run from God. He couldn't do it. But do we think about the fact that God is with us all the time? Sometimes as we go about our lives, it's easy to forget that God is with us all the time. And it's something that I think we probably should meditate on a little more. Wouldn't you agree? If we took some time to just kind of meditate for a few minutes about What do I think about God? And what do I think about the fact that He sees everything that I'm doing? And if you decide that God is real, do you behave like God is real? Do you live your life like God is real? And I got to live my life a certain way because He sees everything I do. And if I have this revere and awe and respect for Him, I'm going to live my life that way. Now you might say, I'm not really sure He's real. I don't really know. So wait a minute. Okay, so if you think He's not real, you got to go back and think about, well, how did this happen? How did order come out of chaos? How did that happen? But even better than that, how did this happen? I mean, I knew I'd get an awe from that. But you think about, babies, life is just amazing. It's so complex. We are complex. You think about our DNA, and even the fact, there's been studies done on when people die. What happens in the body when people die? There's a message that goes out to every cell in the body at death that says, shut down. Which to me is just, it's mind-boggling. It's like we carry a piece of miraculous stuff inside of us that is gone in an instant, and then we revert back to being just nothing. From dust we come and dust we return, Speaking of dust, dirt. How do you go from dirt that's inanimate to this? How do you do that? How do you get order out of chaos, out of non-order? It's got to be because God is right there. And in fact, when you look at this, you can't go anywhere on this planet. Do you ever think about that? You can't. We search all the time for life in the universe. Is there life out there? And we're still looking for it. And we're not sure if there's life anywhere. But on this planet, you can't go anywhere and pick up a random handful of dirt, and it's not full of life. It's full of microorganisms. It's full of stuff you can't see. It's just amazing. And the only way you can free it of life is you got to somehow sterilize the dirt and seal it in a vacuum, and that's how you get rid of life. Life is everywhere. It's everywhere on this planet. It's all the way from the polar, the South Pole, the North Pole. There's life everywhere. And so, we look at Romans 1, verse 19 and 20, particularly that one verse down there, because it says that His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. In the things that have been made. It should be evident to us that God exists because we look around and we see the things that He has created. And there's no conclusion we can come to that's reasonable other than, of course, there has to be a God. There has to be a creator. There has to be a mastermind behind all this. And in fact, it goes on to say, they are without excuse. It's saying we are without excuse. If we don't reach that conclusion, we have no excuse because we've had God's attributes all around us. Amen. And so He does exist, and He's proven to us that He exists. So we're back to this question. What is stirred in me when I think about fearing God? I kind of want to get your thoughts about this. So I'll just kind of open it up. What do you guys think about what we've talked about the last couple weeks and fearing God? Kind of an open-ended question. And it's okay. I'll take a few minutes of awkward silence. That doesn't bother me because I know you're yeah, great. Think about this. Think about, as you're thinking through this, when we talk about fearing God, is that uncomfortable for you? And if it's uncomfortable, why is that? Is it because of maybe relationships in your past, growing up, moms and dads, some moms and dads, great moms and dads, other moms and dads maybe could have used a little help. But we can start thinking negative things about fear. I had fear. With my dad, most of the time, my fear of my father was respect. But there were a few times when my father was not in a good place, and my fear of him was what he could do to me just out of anger. And there were a few times that he did discipline me out of anger. And it's funny, I remember those times. I don't remember any of the times that he disciplined me out of love, although there were plenty of them. But I remember when he disciplined me out of anger. I think if we think about our past, we might, that may be true for some of us. But any other thought? Yeah. And I would say the more you get into the Bible, the more you study it, the more you learn about God, the more you will develop a natural respect and awe for Him. It won't be something you have to force. It'll happen. So these are great. All these are great comments. I really appreciate you participating with it. If we believe God is real, do we also believe His words in the Bible are real? Think about that. Over in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12, it says, the Word of God that we are into, that we're involved with, is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword, any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And no creature is hidden from His sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of Him to whom we must give an account. When we read the Bible, it's the only book like that you can read all of the great books that have been written throughout the ages, War and Peace and whatever you can think of, great books that are considered by the scholars the greatest books. Only one will judge you as you're reading it, and it's the Bible. That's the great thing about the Bible. So the Bible can help you sort through your heart when you get into it and learn about it. Okay? So, great comments today. We're going to close it up here, and next week we're going to talk about what actions and transformations should I make as a result of fearing God. Because we can talk about fearing God for 52 weeks out of the year, but if we don't talk about, well, what am I supposed to do with that? What changes can I make? Then what good is it, right? So next week we're going to close out with that, and Bob's going to lead us in a song here.
Amen.